Hello, and welcome to Master Your Life with Kate McKay, a show exclusively dedicated to uncovering the path to excellence through powerful stories of grit and determination. I'm Kate, and so glad you joined us. Welcome, Genevieve Searle. Welcome.
Hello.
I'm so glad you're here. And you're from where? Where are you from?
I'm on the southern Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia.
Amazing. So cool. And I love
That's why I'm fluffy at the moment, because it's cold.
It's cold. It's hard to imagine. So I'm going to read your bio. Genevieve Searle is best known for her being the optimization queen and has spoken on the TEDx talk stage with How to Thrive in the Era of Uncertainty. I cannot wait to dig into that. She's a mentor guiding game-changing women to align with their genetic genius so they can actualize their soul mission. Combining epigenetic profiling, ancestral alchemy, embodied movement, and functional breathing, plus a host of other modalities, Genevieve weaves cutting-edge science, ancient wisdom, and intuition together with a depth of deep soul work. I'm really excited also too, Genevieve, to talk to you about your best-selling book, Embrace Your Feminescence, a must-read for every woman who wants to embrace their power. Also, Women Gone Wild, and I love that you and I are both connected with the amazing Rhonda. And also, you also have, and it was the Wealth Edition, which is so cool, and also Illuminate Your Feminescence. She's also a PH 360 endorsed health coach. Looking forward to hearing about that. And I would actually love to dig right in. We were talking about epigenetics. And can you just get in and explain to our guests what that is? Because we hear so much about it. And I think people don't have a really deep understanding about it.
Great question. It's good to get clear on these things.
It's true, right?
So just breaking down the word, epi means on or above, and genetics obviously is your genes. So if you can imagine, the way I describe it is, imagine that your body and your genetics, like your DNA, is the wiring in your house. And then the epigenetics is like the light switches in the room. So when you go into a room, you can change the expression of that light switch. You can turn it on and off, but you're not actually changing the wiring in the house. So it's the same with epigenetics. We're not changing, like your DNA, genetics don't change, but your expression can change. And our genes are being turned on and off all of the time. Most of it happens when we're very little, like when we're in development, going from an egg and a sperm into a baby. That process is like so much gene expression happening. It's like on and off and on and off. And this is happening. And that kind of creates a baby. And then it slows down, but it's still happening like all the time in our bodies, because we're these highly sensory beings. We're highly sensitive and aware. And I like to say that we're like in a dance with life. Our bodies are constantly dancing with our life and the world around us, with our relationships, with the food we eat, with the light that we're under, with the water we drink, with every single part of our life. Our body is paying attention to, responding to it, and also predicting the future. So it's anticipating what's going to come and then shifting things around epigenetically. So just turning things on or off, or, it's like a dimmer switch sometimes. And that helps us to be our best with whatever comes.
I love that. What a freedom, right? And I want to hear a little bit more about your TED Talk. But when we think about that, where it used to be like your genetics, I'm a little older than you, but that really was the core belief, that maybe you could change one or two things, but really you were who you were, and your family is who your family. And nope, you're not going to change. It's all you got. This is your, this is your life. And in some ways, it's all of a sudden, it expands this whole level of conscious understanding about the fluidity of who we are. And I think that part of it too is that that also brings up uncertainty. Right? Like if the possibility is all of this, how can I manage through uncertainty with all these different changes and ways that I could go and things that I could follow? How do we ground in this knowledge, Genevieve?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's really valid. One of the things that I work with is, this PH 360 epigenetic profiling. And what that looks at is how you developed. And we all have like this unique epigenetic and hormonal print that basically I feel like it's like as we developed in the womb, and then as we grew up, particularly in the early years, like up to about 7, but even all through development, we're constantly assessing life. Like we're assessing what's going on around us, and our primary concern as organisms is safety. So how are we going to best survive life? And what hormones are we going to lean into that are going to help us navigate and survive life best? So once we figure that out, we become dominant in these hormones, and they become like our leading hormones, and they wire us to look a particular way, to see the world through a particular lens, to have particular mental, physical, emotional characteristics and tendencies. And with this, so PH360 is a profiling technology and app. So with that, there's sort of 6 main categories or 6 main health types, and we each kind of fall into one, but it's nuanced. And this is what I love about, like, I'm a very nuanced person. I'm like, yeah, but what about the bit and the this and that bit? And this is great because not only is it very nuanced, but it also changes and evolves as we do. So as we continue to put in data, as we've made changes over time, it will continue to update and make new recommendations. It's very cool, very precise technology. But in that, what it says is, okay, this is a dominant hormone, and then that's going to wire a particular person for these tendencies. And it's really quite broad. But then where you sit, it's shaped like a circle. So where you sit on that is going to determine, oh, yeah, but you're this dominant hormone, but you've got quite a bit of this. And then there's other links to these ones over here. And as a coach, I can look in the back of someone's profile and I can read. It's like, okay, you've got this one, this one, this. Right. Let's have a look at how and my genius is looking at the back of that and then going, I see this, right?
You see it.
Patterns and threads and how they all weave together. It's so juicy. So then it's like, okay, well, how's that going to show up for you based on who you are now, your life experiences, and I dive into ancestry as well. How is that all going to sort of shape who you are, and what is the genius of that? What is your unique?
Do you think that like digging into that and knowing that information is a foundation for grounding, and being able to have a deeper sense of awareness is what grounds us into purpose and beingness?
So much. So much. I think ultimately, before we can really go to the next level, we have to know who we are. Like, how are we going to, like, if we don't know what level if we don't know what we're standing on, if we don't know who we are, like, we're just kind of floundering around in the dark. And particularly when we're trying to upgrade, we have to get really quite, your high performance, right? So it's the edges. It's like there's a general piece, but then once we're talking about up leveling and optimizing, then it comes down to nuances. It comes down to like, what's that fine edge? So there's going to be like general recommendations that everyone goes, okay, that's generally, it's great to get 8 hours sleep a night. Okay, that's general rule, right? But an individual person is going to have their own chronobiology. They're going to have their own like body rhythm, and that will determine the optimal flow of their day, the optimal flow of like when to exercise, when and how much to eat. Like all of these things are identified and laid out and given guidance in this profiling technology. What I love about it, as you said, it's when we understand who we are and we can sync our lives to match that, then we're coming from a strong foundation to be able to move forward, because we're not living in this constant state of, chronic or low level stress.
Right.
Because
we're getting
constantly
battered.
we're following other people's rules and going against our own ideals.
Right. We're getting battered around by everything around us. That seems to be such an important thematic when we're talking about at least getting some sense of certainty, of knowingness. And in a time of great uncertainty for a lot of people, and uncertainty coming forward. And I love it that this is a science-backed technology, right? Because listen, we're left and right brain. And that's the beauty of what you do, obviously, is your modalities that you use both. I just think I think it's brilliant. It's really fascinating. So I have a question for you. When you were younger, who did you want to be, or what did you want to be?
I really wanted to be an actress when I grew up.
You wanted to be an actress, and yes, and you are one. So was that what you really wanted to be?
When I track back into what it was that inspired that for me, what I really wanted was to be able to inspire other people. So I love getting on podcasts, and I love, getting on stage, but it's all driven by this, like, hey, we can have this amazing world, but it starts with people living their fullest potential. And to start living our individual fullest potential, we have to know who we are. So that's kind of how it's evolved and developed now.
So what were you like as a younger person? How would your mom, or how would people describe you?
My dad would definitely describe me as romantic. I was the youngest of 3 and the only girl, and they were very close together, and then there was a 4-year gap in me, so my brothers were very, very close when we were growing up. And then I had a lot of alone time. And I grew up on a farm. So, I grew up on a farm, so this is really quite interesting. But my father and his sister are like chalk and cheese. And
wait a minute, what does that expression mean? Because I'm American, I don't know.
That's hilarious. Okay, they're polar opposites.
Oh, so chalk and cheese?
Yeah, I don't know.
Never heard of it. That's the best.
There you go. Add that to your list of.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah, so my dad is like this he's a very deep thinker. He's like a natural philosopher. My mum's a psychologist. And then we grew up with, my father is a very considered man. Yeah, my mum's a very, very deep, soulful woman. And then my aunt is this outrageous entrepreneur who looks like this incredibly exotic, fabulous bird all the time. It's amazing. Has started up over 20 restaurants, an incredible woman. And so there was sort of like this very earth-based, and my mom was like earth garden, and we had a compost patch and the whole thing, and she'd put comfrey on my wounds, that kind of thing. So that's kind of where really I got my grounding for that ancestral wisdom piece and the Beautiful. Earth connection. I was very grounded in earth connection my whole life. And then my aunt, we would go to visit my aunt, and it was just, everything was next level. Everything was like 10x. It was like super amazing and fabulous. And it was parties and glitz and glitter and gold and fluorescent. And she's like, so it's just like riding the edges of these worlds. Wow. And then I grew up on a farm in very rural part of Australia. And so I never really fit in anywhere, because
you did not.
I didn't fit in anywhere. And that was very challenging as a young person. I really wanted to be called Stacy, because Genevieve was way too outrageous. Yeah, it meant and because I had a lot of time on my own, I'm a very considered person, and I see patterns and webs and pull threads. And I believe a lot of that has come from that upbringing and seeing that diversity. Because my father as well, even though we grew up on a farm, he came from Sydney. He was an economics master going for his PhD, and his father was a diplomat, so had lived in, Turkey and South Africa and all of these places. So it was it was kind of like I didn't really fit anywhere. Wow.
It's such a diverse group of people around you. Really? So was that a common theme for you? Has that been a common theme, that you were always different?
Yeah.
And so was there a challenge in that for you? I mean, did it breed any kind of insecurity for you, or were you confident in that?
No, it was awful.
It was awful.
Really,
yeah,
it was really hard. It's and understanding now our whole imprinting. We're wired for safety, and I didn't feel safe, because I didn't really know how to be. Like in some ways, I can dance in lots of different worlds, but I don't actually deeply belong in any of them, and I've had to learn how to deeply belong to myself. So the gift is incredible, but growing up, it was incredibly isolating and very confusing. And I spent a lot of my time feeling wrong.
Wow. Well, this is a common theme that I often hear in these conversations of mastery. And I know for me, I never felt like I felt like my life was just a continual state of being thrown into situations and then landing and then looking around left to right, like, okay, where am I now? Right. So it was always like having to be on the fly and being ready, but always feeling alone. And I'm just curious about, when did you realize that you were actually here to lead people to safety and to unification and
wow,
to
I've
peace?
never had it put like that, but yeah, that's full body. I think I had a sense of it from a very young age, probably sub 10. That's a big thing to think about yourself. So, I would never have said that. I would never have, and I have kept a lid on a lot of that for a long time. Interestingly, as you were speaking about, and you were like, okay, there was this and there was this and there was this, and I'm just going, I would love to do your profile. I bet you any money you're an activator. And
I am. It's my number one strength in the Strength Finder. I'm an activator.
Okay,
so think and do,
right? You can pivot in a moment's notice.
In a moment.
Yeah, this is awesome. So you'd be very high in adrenaline, testosterone. Those would be major hormones, and then you have other hormones that would work in other ways that would be really cool to look at. But yeah, so that's how you navigated it. For me, it was like, take a step back. I watch everything. I don't make any moves until I've figured out a lot. But then when I do, I'm like, right, let's go.
Wow. So you have a high level of discernment by the sound of that.
Yeah.
So is that something that you think you had innately based on how you approach and view life?
No, I was very much a people pleaser for a really long time.
Okay. Interesting. So I'm going to bring that question back, that what was it like for you? And let's just imagine this. You're going through, you're in the farmlands and you're walking through this rural area and you're coming to that edge. And then you're seeing yourself and you're saying, I am here to lead others. I am here to inspire others. I'm here to bring people home to themselves. And what is that for you now in this moment?
As in, how does it look practically?
Yes. Tell me about you in this moment of claiming all of this magic.
Yeah, it's stepping forward. I'm a mentor, so I work one-on-one with people, which is really, really beautiful work and really fun and really interesting. But then also, yes, with more reading, more writing, I do definitely have my own books in me, my own single author books to come out, and presenting, speaking on the TEDx that was a life dream come true. That was amazing. And that one won't get to the main TED site because it comes with a warning. So there you go. If you want something interesting to watch, go watch that one.
It will be in the show notes, people. It will be in the show notes.
Yeah. It's like, pretty much everything I do now comes with a warning label. I'm keen to get on stages and start to speak more about exactly that, people coming home to themselves, understanding who we are, understanding where we come from. We stand on the shoulders of these ancestral giants, and how to tap into our ancestry, how to understand that we exist in context, not in isolation. And so if we can understand who we are and how we got to be where we are, then we have this incredibly solid foundation for where we can go. And it takes away the need to follow anyone else's rules, because they actually just don't apply. And the whole world, interestingly, through this particular profiling technology, you can see that the world really has been built by one kind of section of the community. And they're amazing. Like amazing, full go-getters, change the world, that these are mission-focused people. But there's a whole other massive, greater section of the population that doesn't operate that way. They operate in their own very unique, very diverse ways. And it's to bring awareness of how each individual way of being is actually vital for a thriving planet. Like, I'm here for the evolution of humanity. Ultimately, that's my jam. It's like, that's a big call.
Say that again. Say that again.
I'm here for the evolution of humanity. Damn it.
Let's go. Oh my gosh. It's so beautiful. And how powerful is that to claim that? from where, from this picture of you being like, wrong, like I'm wrong because I don't fit in.
Definitely. That was particularly, that was an early childhood feeling. And I feel like it was my circumstances, but it was also sexual abuse as a young girl. It was a neighbor, not family. And then a rape when I was 18. So they were pretty defining moments that led into like eating disorders and very risky behavior. Oh yeah, quite a turbulent depression, medicated for depression for quite a while.
I'm sorry about that. It's just, it's often comes up with clients, and it's so fundamental to the loss of security for so many people. So could you talk us through a little bit about that? Because there are so many people, men and women, that your work, and I think that in our culture in America, the ancestral imprint is so minimized. It's not validated.
I think most Western countries
don't get it. It breaks my heart. So what is the work around that core area where people ultimately aren't safe if they've been abused as such? Why is the ancestry work so important?
I guess I got into that piece to give it a little bit of context because I was on my path to healing physically, mentally, and emotionally and spiritually. It took a very long time. One of the issues with it was like, I'm not getting better. I'm not getting better. Why am I not getting better? I'm doing all of the things. I'm reading all of the books. I'm going to see all of the people. I'm just like, why? And I'm still stuck in here. And I remember one beautiful woman, a friend of mine, I was giving her a hug after just catching up with some friends and some stuff had come up. And she whispered in my ear and she said, are you sure it's all yours? And I just got full body goosebumps. And I was living in quite an alternative community at the time. And even though I had a full body like tingle response, my mind automatically went to, oh, that's just not taking personal responsibility. Like I just stop trying to bypass. So anyway, I'm a hard taskmaster, particularly on myself. And then it wasn't until later when I started studying, did some other mentoring with someone else, and she got us to look into our ancestry and into our mother line, in particular into our mother line. And that was when I started to uncover a whole bunch of really crazy things, particularly about my maternal grandmother, who I never met. I was born on the day, so I have the same birthday, that she would have been 48, but she died at 36, 12 years earlier. So if anyone's into astrology, there's some pretty wild synchronicities there. But so my mother was the eldest of 4.5. She's got a half sibling that we didn't find out about until about maybe 10 years ago. And my grandmother married, it was a shotgun marriage. Do you know what that means?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that another one of those little things? And
it's not clay and cheese, Genevieve.
Chalk and cheese.
Chalk and cheese.
So they married, and she was only 18. And she grew up in the Second World War. And at that time, most of the men in Australia had gone away, or they had died from the First World War. So they didn't have a vast population of men. It was women that were running the country. So if you can imagine that the women growing up during that time would have looked around them and seen that all of the women are perfectly capable. They would have seen how that women were running the country and they were doing a good job. And then we had, the returning servicemen came home, and then there was a big advertising push to get women back in the home. A woman's place is in the home. That came as a backlash because they could see that women were actually doing a really good job. And that was not, because of just where we were at it as a culture at the time. We had all of these traumatized men coming home who needed purpose. They needed to belong. They needed to know that they had meaning. They needed to know that they were strong and powerful because they were probably all shaken to their core. Yes. And so for them to find a level of safety in themselves, they had to get women back at home and get themselves back into the workforce. I'm sure there are a whole bunch of other nuances, but I feel like that is an integral piece that a lot of people miss. So then as this woman who grew up believing that anything was possible and that she could do anything with her life and was very vibrant and vital, Then she was pregnant young. She married someone that, probably shouldn't have married. They had a pretty good life early on. She ended up having a number of children, but she didn't belong. She was not ever destined to be a woman who would be content staying at home. She was uneducated. As a result, it didn't work out great for them. And there were affairs and separations on both sides. And they were, coming and going. And it was the very young years of my mum's life were pretty good, but then it was really turbulent. And then my mum didn't really see her mother until like after she was 13. And then my grandmother died when my mother was 16. So for the last 3 years of my grandmother's life, she didn't have access to her children. So she went out, was pushing against, she obviously had these wings that she couldn't contain into this box, and she didn't fit. And so the frustration and the despondency and the suppression that she would have felt was incredible. And then she was outcast of her community. My grandfather took all of the children, and she was not allowed access to any of her children. She had to adopt one of her youngest son out. So she was, outcast from her community, had lost all of her children, everything that she loved. She ended up developing pancreatic cancer and died within weeks of diagnosis.
Looking for a motivational and inspirational speaker to host your next event? Reach out to me at kate-mckay.com.
Which, at a metaphysical perspective, the pancreas is associated with sugar regulation and insulin regulation. And so it's like she'd lost all the sweetness of her life. I was like, nothing left to live for. So that was an imprint. Then for me, there was also quite a bit of sexual trauma down that line. So then I had all of this stuff embedded into me already, and this sense of being wrong for just existing. I had my father, beautiful man. My, brothers, beautiful men. They're all beautiful men. So it wasn't that I had a traumatic home life, but again, because of cultural and, just where we're at, my father, like a lot of men, really struggled with emotion. And so emotion was not welcome. So my safety mechanism was to be very considered, to not be rash, to not be hysterical, and, to really suppress that very feminine part of myself in order to make everything around me safe as well. So you can see, and that's just one line, that's just one story. That's just one thread. And if we track back, I've got my 2 parents and then 4 grandparents and all of the layers going out.
How do we delve into that? I mean, I guess that's such a powerful question, because people just abbreviate that. And I know it is cultural, like in the more modernized culture, but how do you approach that with your work? I would love the listeners to know some of your processes, like, because you have obviously an outcome-based approach that has a scientific aspect to it, and then an extraordinarily intuitive approach. I would love to hear your process and how you approach that in a way that really helps people find peace and safety in who they are.
Yeah, I think the first thing is with the epigenetic wiring, to just really get an understanding of how they have navigated life to be who they are, and exactly who they are, like who they are, how they're wired. Like, get really clear on that, because then if you understand who you are and how you're wired, you can know how to look after your own nervous system. And that's key. Not everyone's nervous system is the same. So for you and I, for example, we're pretty much polar opposite, I would say, in the circle. And my partner is, he would sit very close to you. When he's upset, he needs to express, he needs to do, he can get fiery and like kind of go out, or, it can be like, and then very often he moves on very quickly. For me, I will go like, so his is, I guess, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. His would be fight. Whereas mine, my initial tendency is freeze. And then I would go towards flight or fawn. And then if I'm really pushed, then I will turn, and then I stand my ground. And that's something to behold.
So the first step is to look at the genetic wiring. And then what would be the next thing?
Yeah. So you start with that piece. That is really key because you have to be able to know how to establish safety for yourself and what that means for you, which is different to other people. So you need to know how to set that up for yourself beforehand so that you're not in a constant state of stress, and you need to know how to deal with it in the moment. So that's the first thing. The second piece then, it is not necessarily in this order, but the two other key pieces are working with embodied movement. I guess working with embodied movement is actually the part. So actually, no, I use them all simultaneously and they kind of all weave together.
Yes.
But I guess if we put an order in it, the next piece then is actually doing some tracking. I call it ancestral tracking. And then you just go on a bit of a path of discovery, like who were your parents? Who were your grandparents? Where did they come from? Where did they live? What was their story? What was going on in their local communities? What was going on in their country, the wider world? What was, happening around them? What was the soup they were swimming in?
Right.
And then, because that's going to determine how then their influences for how they navigated life and have a flow and effect to then how they parent their children, their grandchildren, etc. Context is incredibly important. So understanding, just getting the stories, find the stories. Then I work with like deep guided journeys. And the way I work with those is I use these things I call them integration kits. So even though I do all of my mentoring online, I send people packages of physical items that they can actually use to create an environment to hack their subconscious mind. So the way that epigenetic imprintings happen is because either something very, very big has happened and where, those moments in time where it's like, and I was never the same again. One of those situations.
Right.
Or it's a repeated circumstance, a repeated experience, repeated behavior. So when we work with deep guided journeys, what we're doing actually is creating a big experience. And then the integration kits keep re-imprinting, like we come up with strategies or ideally the client themselves will get the intuitive guidance when they're in the journey of what they need to do from here on. And it becomes so there's like ceremony and ritual. Ritual is just deliberate behavior, like deliberate repeated behavior. And ceremony is a big experience. Let's just break it down.
That's beautiful. I know. I love systems. It's my thing. So if you don't mind just expanding, because you mentioned embodied movement as a big piece of your work, could you explain to the audience how you would describe embodied movement?
Yeah. So it's when we're actually deeply connected to what's happening within us as we move. I did speak about this a little bit on the TEDx, and particularly around ecstatic dance or conscious or free dance, which is essentially just allowing music to move you from the inside. And it's free expression. It's like literally dance like no one's watching. And so but the magic of embodied movement is that you're tapping into what's actually happening within yourself. You're not following someone else's protocol. You're not trying to get your knees and your toes in alignment. It's like, how does your body want to move? And if we scientifically, like, the cerebellum, there's some conversation happening that the cerebellum might be the seat of the unconscious. The cerebellum is very much linked, or the subconscious mind, the cerebellum is very much linked to the physical body, and particularly like ingrained movements. So, when you learn to ride a bike, at first it's really kind of, you have to work really hard to do it. And then you get it and you store that information about, oh, now I know how to ride a bike. And you store that in your body. Next time you get on a bike, you know how to do it. So that we kind of store these pieces around movement in our bodies. Now, when we bring in really embodied movement or free movement, free expression, when we move in ways that we don't normally move, it's like, I heard someone else describe it once, it's like shaking the snow globe. Instead of going down these like classic, we're disrupting the patterns, we're disrupting what is known. And then we can, like, once we disrupt, then we can replace things in out of choice rather than out of habit. So that
So
movement is an unbelievably powerful pathway for transformation.
It sure is. I went to a wicked artsy college, and so it was insane. Like the parties that it would just be wild, crazy 80s stuff. It was crazy stuff. So, but it was a blast, and I think that is so interesting because as a family, I'm one of like 9 children, but growing up, we would all dance. It was like we would crank music, and like big Catholic family, and my dad would do his ski dance and my mom would do her dance, and to like all kinds of crazy music. So it was just, movement was always kind of an innate thing for me. And I love that expression, dance like no one's watching. It's such a huge thing, and it takes so much courage. And I know you and I mentioned this real briefly, but people are so trapped. So many people are trapped in the constraint of how they are viewed and the judgment of others. And what would you like to say to those people that are listening, that say, this sounds so fascinating, Genevieve, but I would never have the courage to do something like that?
Yeah. I guess first I would say is I would just validate that. And yeah, it's true. And we are judged. I think we have to really get to a place of comfort with the fact that we're going to be judged.
Just get over it.
And it's like, and getting to the place where we can just be okay with that, and know that very often other people's judgments of themselves are really a reflection of their own judgment of themselves. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, you don't have to go to a club and do that. You could do it in your own home to begin with. That's an amazing place to start. But the third thing is, there are a lot of places now: ecstatic dance, conscious dance. There's lots of different names for it. 5 rhythms is a variation of it. Kundalini dance, free dance, all of these things are variations of essentially the same thing, which is we're really just getting out of our heads, tapping into our bodies and moving in ways that we feel to, not that we think we should. So going to a place like that facilitates that, they will hold that space for you. Like a place like that knows that is a concern. And a well-facilitated place will be there going, hey, this is going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be potentially wild. Like in some of those places, it does get very wild. It's a free expression space. And so can be yelling and on the floor and growling and on hands and knees and full body orgasm. Like, it's like, it can be the craziest. So, but if it's like a container, if it's a space that's held really well, that it is very safe, and there will, in a well-held space, there will be support people there that can be available for you. If it's like, okay, this is really intense and I'm not coping, right, then there'll be experienced people there who'll be able to say, hey, cool, come with me, let's just sit down. Yeah. So I do a lot of that. I don't host any of those events at the moment, but I crew. I love to staff. It's kind of part of my community service, is to just be present in a couple of those spaces for that, because I just really value the work. It's so powerful. However, this is a cool thing, and I reckon you'll be quite into this. I am in the process of developing my own modality, which combines functional breathing, some basic core principles around strength and movement, with embodied movement. So it's getting out of that, it has to look like this, and make sure that your squat is like that, and getting into what, we're focusing on building strength and fitness, and we're going to focus on this particular area of the body. How does your body want to do that? And tapping into how, feeling your own body, feeling your own muscles, feeling your own joints and tendons. What do they want to do?
I love that. What I love about that conversation is that you think everything has to be done a certain way. And I think I used to own a gym, and I've had so many years of training. And I always tell people that it's a fluid motion. It's not an up and down. Everything is fluid. Everything is dance. Weight training is dance. Close your eyes. What do you feel? Put your hand on that area. Imagine, because you have to talk to people and explain things in ways, because you don't know the number one way that they're going to feel it. Whether you visually demonstrate, you give it to them auditory with imagery, you touch them, you move them, you show them. It's being able to be a powerful mirror, but also allowing them to tap into their body, and in ways that that you create a safe vessel for them. It's just, that's a huge part, I think, of what both you and I are committed to. And I think that's a beautiful part about our journeys through, and the fact that now we are journeying together as we move forward. And I love what you say about really knowing that you're here to inspire others to celebrate that safety that they can have, that they can trust themselves, and that there are many different modalities that we can move through to be who we came here to be, using breath, using movement, using science, using, epigenetics and all those pieces into one and many magical processes. Well, how can people find you? What are the ways that people can play with you, Genevieve? I'm really excited to share that with the audience.
So yeah, you can obviously I'm on social media. I'm on social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the places. Probably the best way is to actually, watch my TEDx, read the books, because that's where I give the depth, that's where people can feel me. So 2 books that have already been released. One is Embrace Your Feminescence. The other is the Women Gone Wild Wealth edition. And in that one, I speak about ancestral wealth. So if you're interested in the ancestry piece, it's written about in there. And there's actually a very cool link to a very cool process. It's actually a highly valuable process. And part of it for me is, I am here for the evolution of humanity, and not everyone's going to work with me. So I wanted to give something in that was actually going to be very high value for anyone to be able to access. Third piece is obviously working one-to-one mentorship. So I do personal body genius profiling, which is a very short kickstart. It's really just working on your epigenetic profile. So we get that. You get the Shay app for 12 months, which gives personalized guidance. And I give you the download of this is what I see at the back, and this is where I see your genius is. And this is how you optimize your life so that you can so that you can really tap into what your genius really is, not what you think your genius should be.
Oh, isn't that a freedom?
Yeah, it's so powerful because it's so validating, because it is science. It's this is my hormonal makeup. I'm not making this up. I'm not pulling it out of nothing. This is actually hormonal epigenetic wiring in my body. It's different to other people's.
Absolutely.
And it's just as valid. And my genius is different to other people's. And when we understand, so for me, really understanding my own, the way I'm wired and how my genius works, what my genius is and how it works best, means I've completely rearranged my life and the way I do things to maximize that. So people actually get my genius instead of trying to follow the cookie cutter approach and meet, I have very few clients because I love diving deep in with them. I don't work with a lot of people because at a time, so that, I can invest in who I am working with. Yeah. And then I've got my 3-month program, which is align and actualize, align to your genetic genius and actualize your soul mission. So that's when we dive into, yes, your personal body genius profiling. We also go into ancestral alchemy and embodied movement and functional breathing. And it's a big 3-month journey with that. I do want to say here that even though I have traversed my own trauma and I've sat in a lot of, and my mother was a psychologist, I have a lot of grounding in understanding trauma, but I'm not a trauma specialist. Right. And I'm not going to make any claims to be. So particularly when we're working with ancestry, knowing that we are all traumatized, we live in a traumatized culture, in a traumatized world, that's kind of just a given. Mostly, I think that we can navigate those things ourselves, but sometimes we get to a point where it's going to be beyond my scope of practice. And so in those situations, I absolutely recommend people get additional support to help them navigate that, because I'm really here for the up leveling into the next piece, backtracking and digging. I do a lot of digging. But yeah, I'm not a trauma specialist.
Right. I get that. And I think that's also just goes, it's we're here for the presence, and then the past informs this moment, but it's really this evolution upward. And there is, when it comes up and the ahas happen potentially. But if we see that it's triggered in trauma, clearly it's one of those places. Just also same thing with me as a high performance coach. This is out of my scope of practice. It seems like this is something that you need to dig in more. So I agree with that for sure. And if anyone listening that knows that something got triggered for you, you're like, oh, wow, like you heard something. Yeah, absolutely. You know, there are so many people out there that are willing to support you in all areas of your life, because you're worthy of feeling whole, and you're worthy of the safety and
Absolutely.
and the peace. We're all worthy of that, and how we bring all those pieces together. It's so powerful. And you know what I love about this conversation? It is so interesting to me because it is so unique. And it is so fascinating. And I'm really looking forward. I mean, I want to sign up just because I want the integration kit.
Totally.
Like, wait a minute. I want the integration kit. I want that integration.
I mean, you get like little, you probably can't see it properly, but you get like little essence sprays and essential oils, because what we're doing is hacking all of the senses. So every kit contains something that will touch on all of the senses. So touch, sight, music, taste, you get like a little ceremonial grade cacao and this whole it's this whole thing. Like, I'm a whole thing person. I'm like, oh yeah, there's this, and then there's this, and this, and this.
That sounds really delicious. Fun. Well, I can imagine how lucky you have 3 sons. I can imagine how lucky they feel to have you as a mama, with all that beautiful modalities that you bring to the world, and in your mothering and in your partnerships. It's a beautiful way to create magic in a family. And then what you're bringing to the world is pretty powerful stuff. So grateful.
So grateful. This is so fun. Yeah, the other one I just wanted to plug Feminescence magazine. So I'm the ambassador of Feminescence magazine for the month of August. There's only 3 publications a year, and they profile 12 women in each magazine. That's it. And I'm fortunate enough to be the ambassador for this one. It's coming out 8th of the 8th. Yeah, and it will be available worldwide. So it's an amazing magazine. It's a really beautiful magazine.
So we'll be sure to share all of these links, and all of ways that you can reach out to Genevieve will be available again in the show notes. And Genevieve, I just want to thank you. Thanks for bringing your energy, your curiosity, your wonder, your transparency, your passion, and your willingness to share this work and committing to it with 2 feet in. It's just a really beautiful thing. I'm so grateful to witness it and to see your excitement and your passion and commitment. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is so fun. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes. And thank you to all you viewers and listeners of this wonderful time and space that we have together. And until next time, make this day amazing. Master your life with Kate McKay. And until next time, take good care. Looking for a motivational and inspirational speaker to host your next event? Reach out to me at kate-mckay.com.